Welcome! So glad you could make it. This is the webinar on the results of the Career Confidence Survey that answers the question, what's the biggest challenge to career confidence? I'm Gwen Chappell. I'm a Canadian certified counselor and an ICF Associate Certified Coach. I really want to thank you for investing your precious time and energy to be here. You have made a wise decision. You've chosen to invest this time in learning some professional and personal development, and I'm going to do my best to make it sure it's worth your time and energy. Now, it's great to know that there's other folks out there who are eager to learn how they can increase their confidence and live up to their full potential. First of all, I just want you to take a second to pat yourself on the back. You took action. Like this woman, you clearly have your eye on the prize. You're already focused on your goals, and that makes you a winner. You've already created a little win for yourself. And I want you to start noticing these little wins and start appreciating them and appreciating yourself for creating them for yourself. So pat yourself on the back for making the effort to be here and learn more about confidence. So today you'll learn a summary of the answers to the survey, what's your number one challenge when it comes to career confidence? Number two, the 4 categories of challenges to career confidence, and a summary of the process to develop your career confidence. And then we're going to talk a little bit about why confidence is not always such a good thing and how to instantly increase your confidence. So by the end of today's webinar, you should have some new ways of thinking about confidence as it relates to your career and as it relates to yourself. And ideally, you'll have some ideas for your next steps and how you can increase your confidence immediately. But before we get into the thick of things, I want to help you to get the most of our time together. You may have noticed that one of my degrees is in educational psychology, so I learned about learning theory, helping people learn and recall information. So I taught study skills, and I was an academic coach and academic strategist. So I know if you want to learn faster and remember more, you want to be actively engaged in your learning. So please turn off the distractions. It's okay to use the chat. I think the chat is actually a good way to interact and engage with other participants and engage with the material. So please feel free to use the chat. Create for yourself a little space, a little psychological space, and maybe a little physical space. You might want to close the door if you can. Make yourself comfortable. If you are like me and you need a pen in your hand to think clearly, then you might want to have a pen and paper handy. That is really old school, isn't it? But it helps. Sometimes people actually like to draw diagrams instead of take notes. Whatever works for you. And another way to really increase your learning for a particular session is to set a goal or set an intention. So I'm going to ask you, what do you want to take away from today's call? So it could be something simple. Just learn one tip, one tool to help you increase your confidence. Just maybe even just the definition of confidence. Learn how I did the survey, anything like that. Just take a couple of minutes to jot down an idea or two about what you would like to take away while I take a little sip of water here. Now, while you're thinking about that, let me tell you a little bit about myself and why you would even want to listen to me in the first place. Well, first of all, I am delighted to be here on the call with you. I love teaching, I love coaching. I'm passionate about people, including myself, develop to their full potential. And I love my work as an online trainer and a coach, which helps me develop my full potential. But it hasn't always been this way. I have always struggled with confidence, or rather, I should say, I struggled with a lack of confidence. And at one time, it really stopped me from getting what I wanted. And it happened more than once. So just to give you a little bit of context, when I was growing up, I was a little bit of a misfit. I grew up on a farm I had a great family, great connections, no complaints about my family. But they just didn't really appreciate my artistic interest. I'm not a farmer. I am not all I appreciate the food that farmers grow for us, and I love gardens, but I am not a gardener, and I am not really, I would make a terrible farmer. I am, and I still am, a very creative and imaginative person, a dreamer who loved to immerse myself in a good book. I don't know how many times I was scolded for having my nose in a book. I love stories, and I still do. I realize now that it's one of the reasons why I'm such a good coach, because I have that ability to listen and really immerse myself in somebody's story, and at the same time see the patterns and the meanings and see what an alternative story might be. But as I said, I didn't really fit in with my realistic working class community, not even school. I was a perfectionist and I was overly sensitive to criticism. So even though I wanted to study art and pursue art, I put that on a back burner because that wasn't what we in this working class community did. So as a dreamy, artsy, scholarly person, I wasn't really robust and strong, and didn't really fit in. So my talents, such as they are, or they were, they went mostly unrecognized, especially by me. And I now know that's discounting, ignoring, overlooking your abilities. And we'll talk a bit more about that later on. Now, when it came time to choose a career, my choices seemed to be teaching, that's a new word, teaching or nursing or maybe medicine, but I didn't really want to do any of those. I wanted to study anthropology. But my father did not see that as being very practical, and he really thought I should go to secretarial school. But I did get to university anyway. I started archaeology, and one of the classes I took was English literature. And what a revelation. People actually took literature seriously. They thought the arts were important. Not only that, they could influence societies. It was mind-boggling. But I always struggled with writer's block. Even though I loved reading and I loved the process of writing, as soon as I had to complete an assignment, I would get anxious. It just felt so much writer's block around this, huge writer's block. I can remember staying up all night, procrastinating until the last possible minute, and then writing the essay just when I was absolutely forced to do. And yet I still did all right. I managed to get through undergrad, and then I went on to a master's in English. And then I really, really ran into some problems. Self-doubt and anxiety just really kicked in with graduate school. I did get through the classes, but I had a lot of difficulty narrowing my choices. I started a thesis. I was able to get a couple of supervisors to help me get this thesis because it was kind of an unusual topic. It was somewhere between speculative novel and women's studies, and so I ended up with a couple of different supervisors. And then I got some really adversarial comments from one of my supervisors. I felt like such an idiot. I felt so inadequate. I just thought I would never be able to finish this degree, and I was ready to give up. I did, however, get help. I got some perspective from a friend of mine, and one of my supervisors was just really affirming and just very calmly said, just ignore that adversarial tone and look at the value of her criticism and her comments aside from the unnecessarily adversarial tone. So it took me 6 years, and I developed some health issues while I got in those 6 years, but I got through that, finished writing that thesis, and I graduated with a master's in English. But I was still struggling with that lack of confidence. I still had that struggle with writer's blocks. So I loved learning, and I knew I loved learning, and I knew I did well in classes. And so I went right back and I started studying educational psychology. and I specialized in counseling and in career counseling. So when I learned about learning and memory and what can get in the way of performance, like anxiety and anxiety issues, and I learned that the problems that I faced with writer's block and anxiety and procrastination and time management were very, very common, especially among students where their program was not all that structured. I eventually graduated with a Master's of Education, and I worked as an academic strategist and academic coach and career counselor at the University of Saskatchewan, where I really put all the learning that I had gathered into good use with dealing with university students. And now I help people develop the confidence to undertake the challenges that get in the way of reaching their full potential. And at the same time, I'm working on developing my own confidence and accepting the challenge of who I am and where my level of anxiety is going to be. And I get to do what I love to do. I get to listen to stories, the real life stories of clients. I get to draw on my strengths of a love of learning and empathy, the recognition of patterns to help people identify their strengths, identify their dreams, and work towards reaching their goals. And when they encounter blocks that get in their way, I get to help people figure out how to get around those or through those or over them. I love this work. I love helping people get past the blocks that undermine their confidence. And I really love helping them know what they are and who they are and what they're meant to do with their lives. It's just my greatest joy. So let me pause here for a minute and ask you, when has a lack of confidence held you back or undermined your performance? Now, if you're willing, you can pop that into the chat, but I understand if it's too sensitive, you might not want to share it. And as we go through the results of the Career Confidence Survey, just notice where the experiences of the survey respondents are similar to your experiences, because that would be the greatest opportunity for a return on the investment of your time in attending this webinar. So I'm just going to turn off the slides for a minute and we'll have a chance to catch our breath and see if anybody has any comments or observations they want to share with the group.